Corporate Finance Excel Practice Problem. In this presentation, we're going to work a practice problem in Excel related to profit margin percent. Get ready, because it's time to take a stance with corporate finance. Here we are in Excel. We have our information on the left-hand side. We're going to put that information into the blue area into our worksheet on the right-hand side, remembering that as we go forward, we're working on practicing with ratios. We need to have ratios in order to compare different things. We need it for many different areas of life when we're trying to compare performance, such as our job performance oftentimes, or when you look at sports performers, we use ratios to judge their performance, just like we would if in our own job, if we were to take the things that we do and compare them to other people and try to see how well we're doing. And of course, when we have the same kind of things for the performance of a company, how did the company perform? Have to use ratios because that's the only way we can compare different companies and certain situations. So we want to get used to these types of ratios. One basic ratio is going to be the profit margin ratio. So we're going to have the profit margin, and that's going to be an income statement ratio. So all of the numbers from it are coming in from the performance statement. So we're looking at basically how well are we doing? What's our performance been over the time period? So what we're going to take is the bottom line of the income statement. So when you're imagining the income statement, bottom line is net income. That's income minus all of the expenses, not just cost of goods sold, but all expenses. We're at the net income, which we're going to say is the profit, because it's revenue minus all of the expenses. Then the top line is sales or revenue. Top line is sales or revenue. Remember that that's our objective, basically, is to increase the revenue. That's why we have the expenses, in order to increase the revenue. So we're going to be comparing the bottom line to the top line. If we divide that out, then we're going to say division problem. This equals to 187 divided by the 2,463,000. That's going to give us a percentage. So it's a 0 now. I'm going to format the cell by going to the Home tab, Numbers group, and then the percent. I'm going to add a couple decimals. And now you could add more decimals here, but typically we'll bring it out to maybe 2 decimals is quite common for the profit margin. So we have the profit margin. Then for A, let's put an underline here. We can go Home tab, font group, underline here. We could put a double underline here, Home tab, font group, double underline there if we so choose. So now what does that mean? Performance statement, that means for every dollar that we are making, that we are keeping after all expenses about 7 cents on it. So 7.59 cents is what we're keeping after every dollar of the sales. Now you might think, why is that important? I'd rather just know how much money I'm getting after all the expenses. So I'm earning $187,000. That's going to be important, obviously, but we can't compare that and benchmark it to other companies as well, and we can't benchmark it as easily even to past performance, because what we want to be able to measure the relationship between these two things. So for example, if we had another company, let's say B here, and we want to benchmark to B, or let's say B is benchmarking or comparing themselves to A because they're in a related industry, but they have substantially different revenue amounts. For example, we're going to say we have the net income for B is going to be, we're saying 14.5, and then the sales is 300,000. So they have substantially less sales, but maybe they're in the same industry, and so they would still like to be able to see how they measure up to A. Well, we can't do it with just the bare numbers here, but we can do it with the percentage. So I could say, okay, this equals the net income divided by the sales. Let's format this one. We're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the Numbers group, make it a percent, add the decimals. So there we have it. And this will be the profit margin for B. So it's kind of like, and let's format this. We'll go to the Home tab, alignment. Let's put an underline here. Let's put the double underline here, Home tab, font, and then double underline. So it would kind of like be if you're measuring a baseball player that has different at-bats, right? There's less at-bats, there's less sales going on for this company than this company. But how are they doing just performance-wise for those times that they get a sale, in terms of how much money are we getting on it? And so here we're getting less money, right? We're getting about 4 cents, 5 cents per dollar sale. Where here we're getting closer to 8 cents per dollar sale. So the larger company here is also more efficient in terms of their profit margin, it looks like, as well. So we can then, once we realize that over here, that tells us something that we couldn't be told simply by the net income. It tells us they're being somehow more efficient in some way. And then we can basically go in and say, okay, what are they being more efficient at? And we can start to drill down on this, and we might do a similar kind of ratio analysis for the expenses as compared to sales and whatnot to try to figure out, what types of areas possibly A is being more efficient at, and how are they then doing so that we can improve. So notice once again, the ratio helps us to do that kind of analysis in many, many different areas, whereas the straight dollar difference doesn't. Just as the straight at-bats don't tell you how many times someone got on base, doesn't tell you how good they are, because they might have had different amounts of at-bats. So therefore, and that applies to many, many different things. Therefore, ratios is something we want to get comfortable with and be able to analyze them. They don't tell us everything, but if the more ratios we get, the more angles we can look at something, the better a picture that we have, the more complete picture we have. We're looking into the fog here. We're trying to figure something out. And the more angles we have to look at this thing, the more likely we're putting together a picture that is accurate.